It began on a rainy evening when a thunder rolled in waves across the small town and lightning cracked through the blackened sky. I was curled up on the couch with a blanket wrapped around me, the soft hum of the television filling the silence of my otherwise empty house. My name is Claire, and I've lived in this house for almost 4 years, ever since I got the teaching job at the local high school. It was a quiet neighborhood where people kept to themselves but nodded politely when they passed you on the street. That night, though, the quietness felt different. Something in the air felt heavy, and even the familiar sound of rain against the window made me restless. I tried brushing it off, telling myself it was nothing more than the storm making me anxious. But then I heard it. A knock. Not the friendly, rhythmic kind of knock you hear from a neighbor or a delivery person. No, it was slow, deliberate, and oddly hollow. It came from the front door, echoing through the house like someone wanted me to know they were there but weren't in a hurry to be let in. My heart skipped a beat, and I froze, clutching the blanket tighter around my shoulders. I checked the time on my phone, 11:47 p.m. Who would be at my door this late, in this storm? My house was a good 10-minute walk from the nearest other home, and visitors rarely showed up unannounced, even during the day. The knock came again, this time louder. I forced myself up and tiptoed toward the hallway that led to the front door. The rain pelted harder against the windows as I peeked through the small glass panel on the side. But there was no one there, just the storm. My pulse quickened. Maybe it was a branch hitting the door, I reasoned, or maybe the wind pushed something against it. But deep down, I knew the sound was too intentional. Someone had knocked. I tried to shake off the unease, return to the couch, and turn the TV volume up. I told myself I was overreacting. But when the knock echoed a third time, longer, harder, unmistakable, I nearly jumped off the couch. This time, I grabbed my phone and dialed my neighbor, Mr. Parker. He was an older man who lived down the road and had always been kind enough to help me out whenever I needed something. The phone rang and rang, but there was no answer. I swallowed hard and tried calling another neighbor, but the line wouldn't connect. The storm must have disrupted the reception. The knock came again. Now I was trembling. I approached the door slowly, peeking again through the glass panel. Still, no one was there. My breathing was shallow, and every instinct in my body screamed at me not to open the door. So I didn't. Instead, I backed away, retreating to the kitchen where I kept a small flashlight and an old baseball bat, just in case. My fingers shook as I gripped the bat, listening, waiting. For a while, the knocking stopped. I thought maybe, just maybe, it was over. But then came the scratching. At first, it was faint, like nails dragging across wood. Then it grew louder, more frantic, moving up and down the doorframe. I covered my mouth to stop myself from screaming. I felt like prey, cornered in my own home. Finally, summoning the courage I didn't know I had, I shouted through the door, "Who's there?" The scratching stopped instantly. Silence. The only sound was the rain hammering against the house. My voice shook as I called again. If this is some kind of joke, it's not funny. Nothing. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, waiting for something, anything, to happen. But the door remained still. No knock. No scratch. Just silence. Exhausted from fear, I finally retreated to my bedroom upstairs. I locked the door, shoved a chair beneath the handle, and curled up on the bed with the bat beside me. Sleep was impossible, but eventually, sometime near dawn, exhaustion overtook me. When I woke the next morning, sunlight was streaming through the blinds, the storm had passed, and everything seemed normal. Almost as if the night before had been a dream. Almost. When I finally gathered the courage to check the front door, my blood ran cold. Deep, jagged scratch marks carved into the wood. I stood there, my hand trembling on the doorknob, my breath caught in my chest. Something had been there. Something real. Over the next week, life returned to its normal routine, or at least I tried to convince myself it had. I went to work, graded papers, smiled at colleagues, and pretended I wasn't counting down the hours until nightfall. But deep down, I was terrified of hearing that knock again. And then it came. The following Friday night, just after midnight, the door knocked again. 3 slow, heavy knocks that reverberated through the whole house. My chest tightened. I didn't even bother to look out the window this time. I knew no one would be there. Instead, I whispered to myself, "Don't open the door. Whatever you do, don't open the door." But curiosity is a dangerous thing. The knocking grew louder, more insistent, until the walls seemed to vibrate with each strike. My heart pounded, my palms sweaty against the bat in my grip. And then, against all reason, my feet carried me to the door. I pressed my forehead against it, listening, and that's when I heard it. A voice. A woman's voice. Faint but clear. "Let me in." The words crawled into my mind, cold and desperate. I froze, my breath coming in sharp gasps. The voice repeated, a little louder this time. "Let me in." My hand inched toward the doorknob before I snatched it back like it was on fire.
No.
I wouldn't. I couldn't. The voice grew harsher, angrier. "Let me in." The door shook violently under the pounding. I stumbled backward, tripping over my own feet, my eyes wide in terror. I screamed, "Go away," but the knocking only grew louder, faster, relentless. Then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. The silence that followed was worse than the noise. For hours, I sat in the corner of the room with the bat clutched tightly in my hands, too afraid to move. When dawn finally came, I rushed to the door, praying it had all been another nightmare. But the scratches were deeper now, stretching across the wood in chaotic patterns, as though claws had raked over it again and again. Over the next nights, the knocking became a ritual. Always at the same hour. Always the same demand. "Let me in." I grew weaker, more exhausted, my mind unraveling with each sleepless night. I stopped going to work. I stopped answering my phone. I barely ate. My whole existence revolved around that door. One night, desperate for answers, I set up my phone to record, pointing the camera at the door. I needed proof that I wasn't going insane. When I played back the footage the next morning, my blood ran cold. There was nothing. The video showed my front door, still, silent, untouched. No knocks. No scratches. Nothing. But I knew what I had heard, what I had felt. And then I saw it. Just for a split second, in the corner of the frame, a shadow. A tall, thin figure standing just out of the light. Watching. I dropped the phone, my whole body trembling. That was when I realized the truth. It wasn't about the door.
It was about me.
Whatever it was, it didn't need the door. It wanted me to invite it in, to give it permission. And I knew if I ever opened that door, I wouldn't be seen again. So now, every night, I sit in the dark with the bat beside me, waiting for the knocking to begin. And it always does. 3 slow, heavy knocks that never stop. Because once it starts, it never goes away.